My name is Isabella Flores, and I was 28 when I first walked through the gates of the Harmony Springs Wellness Center in rural Oklahoma. The compound stretched across 40 acres of prairie grass that whispered secrets in the wind, dotted with modest buildings painted in calming earth tones. Everything looked so peaceful from the outside. I had been searching for something: healing, purpose, a way to quiet the anxiety that had followed me since my mother's death 2 years earlier. The grief counselor in Denver had helped, but when her sessions ended, the emptiness returned. That's when I found Dr. Sarah Chen's online seminars about holistic emotional recovery. Her voice was so gentle, so understanding. She spoke about energy alignment and soul purification in ways that made perfect sense to my broken heart. The application process took months. Phone interviews, psychological assessments, financial disclosures. They needed to ensure I was ready for deep transformation work, Dr. Chen explained. When I was finally accepted, I felt chosen. Special. I sold my apartment, quit my marketing job, and drove my Honda Civic across 3 states to begin what they called my authentic healing journey. The first weeks felt like a retreat. We woke at 5:30 for meditation, followed by the purification diet, raw vegetables, herbal teas, specific combinations of foods that would cleanse emotional toxins from our cellular memory. No caffeine, no processed sugar, no outside media. Our phones were collected each evening for digital detox. We spent hours in group sessions, sharing our deepest traumas while Dr. Chen took careful notes. Emotional suppression is the root of all suffering, she would say, her pen moving across her yellow notepad. Here, we create space for authentic feeling. But authentic feeling had rules. Anger was misdirected energy that needed immediate correction through isolation periods. Doubt was ego resistance, requiring additional purification protocols. Homesickness meant we weren't fully committed to our healing. I learned to smile when I felt sad, to nod when I felt confused, to express gratitude when I felt afraid. The other residents seemed so peaceful. Cameron Mitchell had been there for 8 months, his eyes holding a distant serenity that I envied. Kaylee Thompson spoke in soft, measured tones about her breakthrough moments and energy shifts. Everyone used the same phrases, the same gentle inflections. I practiced matching their rhythm, their vocabulary, their calm expressions. Dr. Chen assigned me to the advanced healing track after my 3rd month. "You show exceptional receptivity to the work," she said during our private session. "I sense you're destined for emotional wholeness." The words felt like warm honey, filling spaces in my chest I didn't know were empty. But lately, something felt different. Wrong, maybe, though I couldn't name it. The way conversations stopped when I entered rooms. The locked filing cabinets in Dr. Chen's office. The hushed phone calls she took behind closed doors. Yesterday, I found Cameron Mitchell crying behind the meditation hall. Real tears, not the controlled emotional releases we practiced in group. When he saw me, his face went blank, that familiar serenity sliding back into place like a mask. "Just processing some energy," he whispered, but his hands were shaking. Last night, lying in my narrow bed listening to the prairie wind, I realized I couldn't remember the last time I had laughed. Really laughed. The sound felt foreign in my throat when I tried to imagine it. 6 months ago, I had been a person who laughed at silly movies and sang badly in the car. Now I was someone who measured my breathing and monitored my thoughts for signs of resistance. The morning bell rang at 5:30 as always, but this time, something cold settled in my stomach as I reached for my meditation cushion. For the first time since arriving, I wondered what would happen if I simply stayed in bed. The advanced healing track meant private sessions with Dr. Chen 3 times a week. Her office occupied the corner of the main building, windows facing the endless Oklahoma grassland. She kept the blinds partially closed, creating patterns of light and shadow that shifted throughout our conversations. "I want you to explore your resistance patterns today," she said during our Tuesday session, her voice carrying that familiar, therapeutic cadence. "Your energy signature shows blockages around trust and surrender." I settled into the leather chair across from her desk, noting how she positioned herself slightly above me, her chair elevated on a small platform I'd never noticed before. The power dynamic felt intentional now, though I couldn't say when that awareness had crept in. I've been having some doubts, I admitted, the words feeling dangerous in the quiet room, about whether I'm making real progress. Dr. Chen's pen moved across her notepad in quick, precise strokes. Doubt is the ego's last defense mechanism. When we're close to breakthrough, the false self creates chaos to maintain control. She looked up, her dark eyes holding mine with an intensity that made me want to look away. You're exactly where you need to be, Emma. Trust the process. The phrase had become her signature response to any concern I raised. Trust the process. Let go of control. Surrender to the work. Each session, she guided me deeper into what she called therapeutic vulnerability, encouraging me to share childhood memories, relationship patterns, financial fears. I found myself telling her things I'd never spoken aloud. The shame I carried about my parents' divorce, my terror of abandonment, the way I'd sabotaged relationships when they became too real. Your healing requires complete transparency, she explained when I hesitated to share details about my inheritance from my grandmother. Secrets create energetic blocks. Financial anxiety is often rooted in unworthiness patterns. I told her about the $43,000 sitting in my savings account, money I'd planned to use for graduate school. She nodded thoughtfully, making more notes. Money carries emotional charge, she said. Have you considered how holding on to those funds might be preventing your spiritual growth? Sometimes we need to release material attachments to access deeper healing. The suggestion felt reasonable in her office, surrounded by certificates and healing crystals, her voice weaving logic through my doubts. She spoke about energy investments and conscious money management, about how the center could help me transform my relationship with abundance. By the end of the session, I'd agreed to think about making a substantial donation to support the healing work. That night, I lay awake thinking about surrender and trust, about the way Dr. Chen's eyes had brightened when I mentioned my savings. The prairie wind rattled my window, and somewhere in the distance, I heard what sounded like sobbing. But when I pressed my ear to the glass, only silence remained. The next morning brought news that Cameron Mitchell had completed his healing journey and moved on to the next phase of his development. No goodbye, no forwarding information. His bed was stripped, his few possessions gone as if he'd never existed. Cameron achieved a significant breakthrough, Dr. Chen explained during group session. He's continuing his work at our sister facility in Colorado. We celebrate his courage to embrace deeper transformation. Kaylee Thompson nodded enthusiastically, but I caught something flickering in her expression, a tightness around her eyes that didn't match her smile. After group, I found her in the garden, pulling weeds with mechanical precision. Did Cameron seem ready to leave? I asked quietly, kneeling beside her in the herb bed. Her hand stilled for a moment. We don't question the guidance, she whispered, not meeting my eyes. The facilitators know what's best for our healing. But that afternoon, I noticed Kaylee Thompson's bed was empty too. According to the evening announcement, she'd also experienced a breakthrough and moved to advanced work in Colorado. 2 departures in one day, both unplanned, both celebrated as spiritual victories. I started paying attention differently. The way conversations shifted when I approached. The locked doors I'd assumed were storage closets. The fact that no one ever received mail or phone calls from family. During my next session with Dr. Chen, I asked about contact with the outside world. External relationships often trigger old patterns, she explained, her pen moving steadily across her notepad. We've found that healing accelerates when clients can focus entirely on their inner work, without outside interference. Your family will understand when you've completed your transformation. But what if there's an emergency? Emma, this. Resistance to isolation suggests you're approaching a significant breakthrough. The ego creates urgency around external connections when it feels threatened by growth. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to an intimate whisper. You're so close to the emotional wholeness you came here seeking. Don't let fear sabotage your progress now. Her words felt like warm water, dissolving my concerns even as part of me wanted to hold on to them. This was why I'd come here, to stop second-guessing everything, to trust someone who understood healing better than I did. Dr. Chen had helped dozens of people transform their lives. The testimonials on the website proved it. But walking back to my room, I passed her office and heard her voice through the partially open door. She was on the phone, her tone different, sharper, more businesslike. The Thompson girl was getting too curious about the financial arrangements. Yes, we moved her to isolation until the transfer could be arranged. A pause. The Flores girl is almost ready. She's mentioned the inheritance 3 times now. I estimate another 2 weeks before full compliance. I pressed myself against the wall, my heart hammering so loudly I was certain she could hear it. The Flores girl. That was me. Emma Flores. And what transfer? What had happened to Kaylee Thompson? No red flags yet. She's responding well to the therapeutic authority model. Classic abandonment issues, desperate for approval. The financial surrender will feel like spiritual growth to her. Dr. Chen's laugh was cold, nothing like the warm, nurturing tone she used in our sessions. Trust me, I've been doing this for years. They always want to believe they're choosing it. I backed away from the door on trembling legs, my mind struggling to process what I'd heard. Therapeutic authority model. Financial surrender. They always want to believe they're choosing it. In my room, I sat on my narrow bed and tried to make sense of the fragments. The locked filing cabinets. The missing residence. The way Dr. Chen had steered every conversation toward my inheritance. My need to release material attachments. The isolation from family and friends presented a spiritual discipline. I thought about Cameron Mitchell's tears behind the meditation hall. The fear in his eyes when he saw me. About Kaylee Thompson's mechanical responses. The way she'd whispered about not questioning guidance. About the sister facility in Colorado that no one ever seemed to return from. My hands shook as I reached for the small notebook I'd hidden under my mattress, the one where I'd been recording my healing insights, as Dr. Chen suggested. But now I saw my own words differently. Detailed accounts of my vulnerabilities, my financial situation, my family relationships. A perfect roadmap for manipulation. Outside my window, the prairie stretched endlessly in all directions, and for the first time since arriving, I understood why the isolation felt so complete. We weren't just cut off from the outside world emotionally. We were physically trapped, miles from the nearest town, dependent on the center for transportation, communication, everything. I was not healing. I was being harvested. The next morning, I forced myself through the usual routines. Morning meditation. Purification breakfast of raw vegetables and herbal tea. Energy alignment session with Dr. Chen, where I nodded and smiled while she probed deeper into my relationship with my late grandmother's estate. You mentioned your grandmother left you some property, she said, her pen poised over my file. Have you considered how holding on to material inheritance might be blocking your emotional growth? I kept my voice steady. I haven't really thought about it that way. The center has helped many residents release these earthly attachments. There's a beautiful freedom in letting go completely. Her smile was warm, practiced. We could explore some options that would honor both your healing journey and your grandmother's memory. I nodded, playing the eager student while my mind raced. She was moving faster now, more direct. How many others had she guided through this same conversation? That afternoon, I volunteered to help with filing in the administrative building. The volunteer coordinator, Cameron Rodriguez, seemed surprised but grateful for the help. As I organized intake forms, I memorized names and dates, building a mental timeline of arrivals and departures. The pattern was clear once I knew to look for it. Residents typically stayed 6 to 8 months. Those who'd been here longer, like Cameron Mitchell, had a hollow quality to their responses. The ones who'd been here longest barely spoke at all. I found Kaylee Thompson's file buried in a stack marked transferred. The final note in Dr. Chen's handwriting read, Subject achieved complete financial surrender. Relocated to Colorado facility for advanced integration work. My blood ran cold. Subject. Not resident, not patient. Subject. That evening, I approached Cameron Mitchell during the silent hour before dinner. He was sitting alone in the common room, staring at nothing. Cameron, I whispered, settling beside him. I need to ask you something. His eyes darted toward the hallway where staff members occasionally passed. We're not supposed to. I know about the phone calls, about the transfers. I kept my voice barely audible. How long have you been here? 14 months. The words came out like a confession. And your family? They think I'm at a retreat center in California. Dr. Chen handles all the communication. His hands trembled slightly. She says my family isn't ready to understand my transformation yet. What about money? Assets? Cameron's face went pale. She helped me liquidate my retirement account for the advanced healing program. But there's always another level, another breakthrough that requires more investment. I felt sick. Cameron, we need to get out of here. You don't understand. His voice was barely a breath. I tried to leave once. They said I was having a spiritual crisis, that leaving would destroy all my progress. They kept me in isolation for 2 weeks, for my own protection. He looked at me with hollow eyes. There's nowhere to go. We're 40 miles from the nearest town. No phones, no internet access. And even if we could leave, who would believe us? Dr. Chen has credentials, testimonials, a whole network of professional references. That night, I lay awake planning. The center's isolation was both their strength and potential weakness. If I could get word to the outside world, if I could document what was happening here, maybe I could expose them. But I needed evidence, and I needed a way to communicate. The next day, I volunteered for kitchen duty. The cook, an older woman named Isabella Morales who wasn't a resident, seemed different from the staff. She'd worked here for years, but lived in town, commuting daily. Isabella, I said while we prepared vegetables, do you ever notice anything unusual about the residents? She glanced around nervously. I just cook. I don't get involved in the therapy side. But you've seen people come and go. Have you ever wondered what happens to the ones who transfer? Isabella's knife paused mid-chop. There was a girl, maybe 6 months ago. Kaylee. Something. Sweet kid, reminded me of my daughter. She was supposed to transfer to Colorado, but... She lowered her voice. Her mother called here looking for her. Dr. Chen told her Kaylee had requested no contact during her intensive healing phase. But the mother seemed so worried. Do you remember the mother's name? Thompson. Sarah Thompson. She left her number, asked me to call if I ever saw Kaylee. Isabella looked around again, then pulled a crumpled piece of paper from her apron pocket. I kept it. Don't know why. My heart raced. Isabella, I think Kaylee might be in danger. All of us might be. What are you saying? I think this place isn't what it claims to be. I think they're taking people's money, isolating them from their families, and when they've gotten everything they can. I couldn't finish the sentence. Isabella's face went white. You need to be careful. Dr. Chen has connections everywhere. Police, social services, other treatment centers. She's very respected in the community. Will you help me? Isabella stared at the phone number in her hand for a long moment. What do you need? A way to contact the outside world. And maybe you could call Kaylee's mother. Tell her someone here is asking about her daughter. That evening, Isabella slipped me a small flip phone during dinner service. It's old, but it works. I'll tell Sarah Thompson that someone at the center wants to talk to her about Kaylee. I hid the phone in my room and waited until the deepest part of the night. The center was silent except for the wind across the prairie. I dialed the number Isabella had given me. Hello? The voice was tired, worried. Mrs. Thompson? My name is Emma Flores. I'm at the Harmony Wellness Center in Oklahoma. I think I knew your daughter Kaylee. The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Then, Kaylee's been missing for 4 months. The center says she's in Colorado, but I've called every facility there. No one has heard of her. My hands shook. Mrs. Thompson, I think your daughter might be in serious danger. I think we all are. What do you mean? I told her everything. The financial manipulation, the isolation, the transfers that seemed to lead nowhere. The way residents disappeared and were never heard from again. I've been trying to find her, Sarah Thompson whispered. I've called the police, but they say she's an adult who chose to be there. The center has all the right paperwork, all the right credentials. Mrs. Thompson, I need you to do something for me. I'm going to try to find evidence of what's happening here, but I need someone on the outside who knows the truth. If something happens to me, if I disappear like Kaylee did, you'll know it wasn't voluntary. What can I do? Document everything. Keep records of our conversation. And if you don't hear from me in 1 week, contact the FBI. Tell them about the financial fraud, the missing persons. Make them investigate. After I hung up, I sat in the darkness of my room, feeling the weight of what I'd committed to. I had 1 week to find proof of what was happening here, or I might disappear, just like Kaylee Thompson. The next morning, I began my real investigation. During my session with Dr. Chen, I asked about visiting the Colorado facility. "That's wonderful that you're thinking about advanced work," she said, making notes. "But first, we need to complete your financial preparation. Have you given more thought to liquidating your grandmother's property?" "I'm ready to take that step," I lied. "But I'd love to hear from some of the residents who've made that transition. Maybe I could speak with Kaylee Thompson?" Dr. Chen's pen stopped moving. For just a moment, her mask slipped, and I saw something cold and calculating in her eyes. "Kaylee is in a very intensive phase of her work. No outside contact is permitted." Of course, I understand. But I didn't understand. I was beginning to see the truth, and it was more terrifying than I'd imagined. The Harmony Wellness Center wasn't just taking people's money. It was making people disappear entirely. That night, I used Isabella's phone to call Sarah Thompson again. "I think your daughter is dead," I whispered into the darkness. "And I think I'm next." 11 months later, I sat in a coffee shop in Denver, watching snow fall against the window. The FBI investigation had taken 8 months to complete. Dr. Chen was serving 15 years for fraud, conspiracy, and human trafficking. The Harmony Wellness Center was permanently closed, its assets seized to compensate victims. They found Kaylee Thompson's body buried on the compound grounds in rural Oklahoma. She'd died from complications related to the extreme fasting protocols her death covered up to protect the center's reputation. 7 other bodies were recovered. People who'd asked too many questions, who'd tried to leave, who'd become inconvenient. Sarah Thompson and I testified together at the trial. She held my hand during the hardest parts, when they played recordings of Dr. Chen's sessions, when they showed the financial records documenting how systematically they'd drained people's accounts before making them disappear. Isabella Flores had survived. She'd been found at the Colorado facility, malnourished and traumatized, but alive. She was in therapy now, real therapy, rebuilding her life one day at a time. We exchanged letters sometimes. Careful words about healing and hope. I'd started working with a victims advocacy group, helping other survivors navigate the legal system. I advocate for stronger patient protections in therapy, speaking at conferences about the warning signs of therapeutic abuse. My voice was steady now, no longer the whisper it had been in those final days at the center. The nightmares had mostly stopped. I'd learned to sleep without checking the locks 3 times, without keeping my phone charged and ready by my bed. I'd learned to trust my own instincts again, to recognize the difference between genuine care and manipulation disguised as healing. Sometimes I thought about the woman I'd been when I first walked into that center, desperate for answers about my anxiety, willing to believe anyone who promised peace. She felt like a stranger now, someone I'd known long ago but could barely remember. My apartment was small, but mine. No dietary restrictions, no mandatory meditation schedules, no one monitoring my phone calls or bank account. I could eat what I wanted, sleep when I was tired, speak to anyone I chose. These simple freedoms felt revolutionary after everything I'd experienced. The settlement money had helped, but more than that, I'd learned to value my autonomy above comfort, my truth above acceptance. I'd learned that real healing doesn't require surrendering your will to someone else, doesn't demand isolation from everyone who loves you. On quiet evenings, I thought about Kaylee Thompson and the others who hadn't made it out. Their families deserved to know the truth, deserved justice, deserved the closure that had taken me so long to find. The investigation was over. The trials were finished. The center was gone, its buildings demolished, its prairie compound returned to empty grassland. Dr. Chen would spend the next decade behind bars, and I would spend the next decade rebuilding everything she'd tried to destroy. I closed my laptop and gathered my things, stepping out into the Denver snow. The cold air felt clean against my face, sharp and honest in a way that reminded me I was alive, I was free, I was finally safe. It was finally over, and the silence felt earned.